Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar in our three-part Embracing Care series. This series is brought to you by CanDo Multiple Sclerosis and EMD Serono. Tonight's webinar will focus on communicating about the tough stuff with the healthcare team and each other. My name is Holly Theraldson. I'm a Programs Manager for CanDo MS, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Embracing Cares is an initiative led by EMD Serono in collaboration with leading caregiver organizations around the world to increase awareness and action about the often overlooked needs of caregivers. The series will include 3 webinars, 3 podcasts, and 3 online support groups specifically for support partners. You can find information about upcoming webinars and podcasts on our website at CanDo-ms.org/EC. CanDo MS delivers health and wellness education programs to help families with MS thrive. Please visit the CanDo MS website, candoms.org, to learn more about CanDo MS's online and nationwide in-person programs. We will have about 20 minutes at the end of this webinar for questions and answers. If you have a question during the presentation, you can type it in using the question chat box found in your control panel. This presentation is being recorded and will be archived on CanDo MS websites. You can download a copy of tonight's presentation and additional resources from your control panel. You'll also be able to access these resources in the follow-up email that will be sent after the Embracing Cares webinar. Our speakers this evening are Roz Kalm and Megan Weigel. Roz is a clinical psychologist who has specialized in MS care, support, and education for over 30 years. Roz was with the National MS Society from 2000 to 2016. She is currently working with the Society as a consultant, and she is also a senior programs consultant on the CanDo MS team. Welcome, Roz.
Glad to be here.
Megan is a nurse practitioner and has been practicing neurology for about 20 years, most of which has been focused on MS. She recently completed a fellowship in integrative medicine at the University of Arizona and has launched her own practice called First Coast Integrative Medicine. Welcome, Megan. And now
Hi.
I'd like to turn the program over to Roz and Megan.
Hi, everyone. We're going to do some polling questions. And pardon the technical difficulties here, but I can't see the arrows. Okay. So our learning objectives tonight are to identify the topics that can lead to communication challenges that are really specific to people living with MS and encompass intimacy, mood, cognitive changes using mobility aids, and also the future and its unpredictability. To consider the relationship of the support partner with the healthcare team, and to learn strategies for starting successful conversations about sensitive topics, both from the viewpoint of the person who lives with MS and from their support partner. And then also become familiar with online resources to help jumpstart difficult conversations. So we'll begin with some polling questions.
So thanks, Megan, for getting us started. I'm really excited to be here tonight doing this with Megan because in our work, in our respective fields, we've had many conversations with individuals living with MS and their support partners about the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. And we know how sensitive and difficult they can sometimes be for folks. So we want to start by asking you a few questions. First, just to give us an idea who's on the webinar with us tonight, please let us know if you're a person with MS, a support partner, if you are watching it together, or if you're someone other than that. Let's see what our results are. So a little more than half of you are individuals living with MS, but we have a good number of support partners, and I'm really happy to see the 17% are watching this together, because I think that's where the communication really begins.
Yeah.
So let's have our next question. Have you ever been referred by a healthcare provider to seek counseling around any of the issues Megan mentioned or any other issues? So many fewer than half of you have been referred. And one of the things that we're always interested in is whether the referrals haven't happened because people haven't brought up issues with their healthcare provider or asked for a referral, or if it's the healthcare providers who aren't bringing up some of these difficult topics and recommending a referral. And I'm sure Megan would agree with this, we would love to see these numbers reversed, since we know
Yes.
that counseling can be such a valuable tool. If you were referred, those 35% of you or so who were referred, did you actually make an appointment and follow through? Perhaps people are having difficulty deciding whether it's a yes or a no.
Yes. Half and half.
It's about half and half, and it reminds me that at some point when I was working at an MS Comprehensive Care Center, the neurologist I was working with frequently made a recommendation that people see me and gave them my card for when they were ready. And at some point, a person came in and took out this crumpled, dirty, torn card that she'd actually been carrying around for several years, and finally decided that it was time to get in touch and start some therapy. So the fact that you've been given a referral means that at any time you can take advantage of it. Okay, so a last question. With whom do you talk about these challenging topics? And I want you to indicate all of the folks that you have used as resources. And you'll notice that we didn't say nobody, first of all, because you don't get that many options. But we're hoping that even if you don't see a therapist, that you have found someone in your life with whom you can talk about challenging topics. So let us know. Very interesting. Okay, so the majority of people are talking with a partner, spouse, some informal or paid caregiver or friend, and quite a few, but surprisingly, only 20% have actually brought them up with a neurologist. So again, I would be interested in Megan's comment about this, but I think that given the very short duration of most appointments with one's neurologist, you really have to prioritize some of these issues if you want them to come up in the appointment and make sure they get the attention that they deserve.
Yeah, I'm really surprised at the 0% for nursing, because the nurses are the ones who are usually taking the phone calls about these sorts of questions when they come in outside of appointment times. I'm surprised about that.
Yeah, me too. And many people comment that nurses can be much easier to talk to than physicians. So yeah, that was a surprise.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move forward with our content. Again, I'm having a little bit of a hard time, Holly, seeing these arrows. There they are. I'm sorry, guys, for the technical issues. All right, so Roz, let's move into your, we start off with a bang here, right? We move right into it. We're gonna have a case series as we present these topics to you, and hopefully they'll generate some thoughts as you are presented with these ideas in your own life. So this one is about intimacy, or the love stuff.
And that's on you, Megan.
Oh, that's me. Okay, sorry. I do not have control of the slides right now. I have no idea what's happening. I'm really sorry.
I think our computers are having equal difficulty with these challenging topics. So we'll have to get.
This is how we all feel, right? When we talk about this kind of thing. I'm even blushing.
Well,
So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about Maddie and Chris. And you know, for those of you who are on the webinar tonight, you may be able to pull up, I think that you have a PDF of the presentation available. So you can even open that and look at the slides until we get this issue worked up. So Maddie was diagnosed with MS at the age of 32, 10 years ago. So when she was a young adult, she and Chris, her husband, have 2 kids. They're 12 and 7 years old. And early in life, she experienced spinal cord lesions that affected her bladder function. So right out of the gates with MS, she was already faced with a challenge that affected her in a way that could cause embarrassment and could cause difficulty with intimacy with partners. She had additional issues with bladder control after her children were born. And she also had a decrease in her sex drive and ability to achieve orgasm. And I would like to clarify those 2 terms, because people often confuse orgasm with sex drive. So people will come in and they say, I have no sex drive, I have no sex drive, I have no sex drive. And we talk about things and about the desire to have sex or to be intimate with a loved one. And actually what they have is an inability to achieve orgasm, which is a lot different than actually wanting to achieve orgasm or wanting to be intimate with a partner. So unfortunately, she was having difficulties with both. And the reason why it's important to separate the 2 is because the potential treatments for the 2 are different. So she worries that her relationship with Chris is becoming affected by their lack of intimacy, and wishes that she could just get over it. Like, she kind of thinks, maybe it's something in my head, maybe it's my fault, you know, maybe I can just think my way out of this, which is a problem for women as a whole. She notes that her physical issues and the busyness of their family life are barriers to intimacy. So she's already, you know, struggling with a busy schedule, and she may be working and her husband may be working, and then they're trying to find time for intimacy at the end of the day when she may be tired, and in such a way that it doesn't affect her MS symptoms more than it already has. Let's see if I was going to try the cursor one more time, but it's not cooperating with me.
Holly, can you move the slides from your end so that people can see the description of Maddie and Chris?
Okay, great. Could I just turn the wheel over to you, Holly, with the slides, and we'll move to the next one?
Yes, Megan, that's not a problem at all. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. Thanks. So communicating about intimacy is a really big challenge. And what's the challenge with it? Well, everyone thinks someone else is going to bring it up. So it's the last point on the review of systems in an office visit with a neurologist or a healthcare provider. And then the provider often worries about offering a successful intervention. So specific to women with MS and sexual dysfunction, there is no FDA approved or frankly no always effective treatment to treat orgasm. There are a few medications for men and women to try to increase sex drive, but there's no, pardon the pun, magic bullet to improve libido or to improve orgasm or to improve sexual communication among a partner group. So additionally to the everyone thinks someone else is going to bring it up, that doesn't just apply to the visit with the neurologist, it also applies to your relationship, right? So you may be stewing in your head about how you wish you were more intimate or you wish you could just get over it, and then your partner's stewing in their head about how they wish you could be more intimate and they wish someone could just get over it, and nobody's talking, and then everyone just shuts up and doesn't communicate anymore, and that makes it even harder to talk about. Specific to a conversation in an office visit for multiple sclerosis, how can the support partner be involved? And we think that the best way is to just be present, and that is in a conversation with your partner or at a visit. And that may mean that you are listening beyond what your partner is saying and asking questions to help bring out the issue at hand. And successful conversation starters often occur just by being kind to one another and kind of opening the gates of, in a romantic relationship, of what you guys began with in the first place. Like, what did you do? Well, you went out on a date. Maybe you need to go out on some regular dates to establish a better relationship with one another that's affected by not just a busy life. That's enough. A busy life is just enough. But then you throw MS into the busy life, and that makes things a little bit more complicated. Be honest about your symptoms and how they affect intimate interaction. And so that might mean that, say, for a man living with MS, his best time of day from the standpoint of physical stamina and fatigue is in the morning, whereas his wife usually wants to be intimate in the evening because she's checked all the boxes off of her to-do list. And so I'm not even speaking from experience at all. So you know, really becoming a little bit, you know, some of you come a little bit this way, you come a little bit this way, you meet in the middle. Being honest about how your symptoms, again, affect that interaction. And maybe it's bowel or bladder symptoms. Like, you have to be sure that you have an empty bladder and that you have empty bowels before you can be sexually intimate with your partner. But letting them know that, and letting your partner know what that barrier might be, makes your partner less likely to feel like it's something that they've done to cause a problem. And also saying, my intimate relationship with my partner is important. Lately, I've noticed X, Y, or Z. And that's kind of a conversation starter, either in a visit or to your partner. My intimate relationship with you is important. Lately, I've noticed that we don't seem to be as intimate, or you seem to be in pain or tired or, things like that. Roz, I'm sure you have a lot of isms to add to this. Please help me.
No, I just had two thoughts, and one is that if symptoms are getting in the way, fatigue, pain, stiffness, bladder, as Megan mentioned, one of the first steps is that very honest conversation with your MS provider that says, my symptoms are beginning to interfere with my intimate relationship with my spouse, and I'm wondering if you can help me manage those symptoms in an effective way, so that they don't get in the way. Sometimes it's the timing of a spasticity medication, or sometimes it's different strategies for treating fatigue. But in addition to asking your healthcare provider to help you manage symptoms, I think it's really important for couples to be creative, to let go of the idea that sex and intimacy always have to be the way they were when you were 20, or they're no good anymore. That you can redefine it for yourselves in any way that is comfortable and acceptable to the two of you. So the goals may be different, the way you get pleasure may be different, the way you communicate the intimacy may be different, and all of that is okay. But it starts with being able to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly right. I think the most important part that we'll drive home during this conversation tonight is, if you don't talk about it, no change can happen, except for the bad kind, right? So we've provided a couple of online resources here for you. One is from the National MS Society. The other is for Can Do MS. I think it's also important to note that there are therapists who specialize in sex therapy. And if that's something that you feel as a couple is important enough to you to invest that time in, then you should ask for a referral to someone who is well known for that and respected in your community. Okay, I had control for a moment, and now it's gone.
You don't want to talk about doom and gloom. Okay, so this is my topic. I get to talk about mood changes because I'm the psychologist in this duo. So I want you to see the slide about Sofie and Will. And I'm thinking that there are some of you watching who will really identify with Sofie. She's really feeling as though she's lost herself. She had normal periods of grieving following MS-related changes and losses, the way everybody does. Those periods of grief have really lengthened into just one long, extended episode of darkness. She's lost her feeling of connection with her life, her spouse, and the world around her. And sometimes she just feels so useless and diminished that she feels as though she may just blow away. And Will, on the other hand, has started to feel as though he's living with a shadow. That vibrant, wonderful, funny, smart person that he felt so connected with is kind of beyond his grasp. He doesn't know what's happened to her. So he has no idea how to reconnect with her, what to say or what to do. And this is a very common scenario when one or both people in a couple are very, very depressed. And it's those of you who've heard me talk about before on webinars, depression is one of the most common symptoms of MS. So this is not an unusual scenario that we're describing here. But it's hard to talk about, in spite of the fact that at least 50% of people are going to experience significant depression in the MS population. It's just something that it's still embarrassing to talk about, or people feel there's some stigma about it, that somehow they should be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and be tough and strong. And that's not what depression's about. It has nothing to do with weakness or inadequacy. It is a symptom of MS that is just as debilitating potentially as any other symptom of MS. So you need to advocate for yourself, put the embarrassment behind you, and make sure that people in your life know what's happening. And one of the reasons we do these webinars is that sometimes people don't bring it up because they don't know that it's a common symptom of MS and that it's part and parcel of what they're dealing with, which is why the National MS Society now advocates for early screening at the time of diagnosis and then periodic screening every year after that, because it is so common. There's also this kind of don't ask, don't tell, and it's very similar to what happens with intimacy and some of the other issues we're going to talk about. As Megan said, doesn't come up because nobody brings it up. So if you're not telling your provider or your support partner isn't, and the doctor doesn't ask as part of a regular visit, how's your mood? What's happening? If there've been any changes, it's likely not going to come up. And depending on what part of the country you live in, a provider may be worried that he or she doesn't have a good place to refer you. But I want to mention here right away that if you're in a circumstance where you would like a referral to a mental health provider to either help you assess whether you're depressed or to provide treatment, you can call the National MS Society's MS Navigator service, and I'm sure that number is here, but I'll give it to you now, 800-344-4867, and an MS Navigator will connect you with a provider in your area. Now, can we go back for a second, because I think it's very important here to talk about how support partners can be involved. So if we can go back to the previous slide, what we would have liked Will to do in the circumstance we just described is not to sit back and wonder, but to speak up and ask. I've noticed a real change. I can't seem to connect with you. Can you try and explain to me what you're feeling? I would like to help. I miss you. So ask. Don't jump to conclusions about what's going on, and don't assume that you have no role to play. And as Megan has said, it's always helpful for support partners to participate in doctor visits, because sometimes you as a support partner may notice very clearly that something is going on, but your loved one isn't bringing it up. So you may be asked by the doctor, well, have you noticed anything? And then it's okay to say, well, I really have noticed that my wife or my husband's mood seems to be very different. And also, I think it's important to recognize that support partners are also very susceptible to depression. And this isn't just support partners in MS, but in all chronic illnesses. And so you really want to be kind of keeping tabs on each other and noticing when there are significant mood changes in either one of you that might need attention. And now I threw Holly off by talking about the National MS Society's Navigators, but in addition to the wonderful MS Navigator service, there's also an organization called Mental Health America, and that's on the next slide, please. If you go to the Mental Health America website, they have free anonymous screening tools, not only for depression, but for anxiety, bipolar disorder, a whole variety of mental health conditions. And you can take a standardized, validated online test, totally confidential. It will print out your results, and you can take those results to your healthcare provider and say, this seems to indicate that I'm having some issues and I'd like you to help me get a referral. And also, I think, at least there was, but at the bottom of this slide, there was one more resource, which is our Can Do MS webinars. And we have done several on mood. And I would encourage any of you who have concerns about it to check out those webinars. And now I get to talk about my other favorite topic, which is the cognitive changes that can occur. If you haven't all figured it out yet, we're referring to all these things as stuff: intimate stuff, mood stuff, cognitive stuff. So we're going to talk about Ben and Deborah. And in this situation, if we can have the next slide, please. So Ben was the kind of guy who was always sharp as a tack. He was this focused, decisive, very clear-minded person. He was the one who planned all the family's outings, and he always put himself in the driver's seat, literally and figuratively, because in his mind, driving is what men do. So he recently found himself at a local intersection near his home, and he had no idea where to turn or what to do next. He just felt disoriented in space, he couldn't remember, and he wasn't sure what to do. Similarly, if he's driving in the car and his kids are in the backseat bickering the way kids do in the backseat, he can't focus. He tends to get lost because he's distracted by them in the backseat and the fact that they always want to have loud music on the radio or videos playing. So wife Deborah is now scared to be in the car with Ben. She's lost confidence in his abilities. She feels he's not in control, and he's much too distracted by everything that's going on to focus. She feels that she should do the driving, particularly if she or the kids are going to be in the car, but she doesn't even know how to broach this subject because it's such a sensitive issue for Ben. So what are they going to do about this? It is difficult for couples to discuss cognitive changes. Our cognition is so central to our core being, to our sense of self, to our identity, that when cognition changes or doesn't feel as tight as it used to, people lose their self-confidence. It hurts their self-esteem. They don't understand it. So one of the things that's going on is that people don't always know that what they're experiencing is related to their MS, right? They don't understand the ways in which MS can affect cognition, and particularly if they're people in their 50s or 60s, they may assume it's just related to normal aging. I can tell you personally, there is nothing normal about aging. It just is what it is. But they don't know what to do or how to bring it up. And typically, people are not screened for cognitive function, although that is now something, again, we've recently published a paper at the National MS Society with very strong recommendations that everybody be screened at diagnosis for cognitive changes, since they can appear very, very early in the disease process and yearly thereafter. This is nothing to be embarrassed about. It is a symptom just like other symptoms of MS. And the sooner that you talk to somebody about it, the sooner you can get help so that it doesn't interfere with your employment, your relationships, and your activities in everyday life. Sometimes healthcare providers don't bring it up because they don't know where to refer or what to do. And we're actively working right now to build the workforce around this so that there are more psychologists, speech language pathologists, and occupational therapists who have the training to do the screening, the assessment, and the interventions to help people with MS who have cognitive changes. Again, support partners play a vital role here. Sometimes you will notice changes before your partner does. Sometimes the person with MS will notice first. Who's ever noticing it, you have to bring it up and talk about it in those doctor visits, which we hope you're attending together. The other ways that support partners and other family members can help is that once a problem has been identified and the person with MS has been given some organizational and compensatory strategies to help, support partners can really be part of that process. They can help to ensure that the organization and the consistency and the structure that's recommended in the household happens, that things are in their right place, that there's a family calendar on the wall, that everybody takes responsibility for supporting the efforts at compensating for cognitive changes. The other thing we strongly recommend is for support partners and their loved ones with MS to have clear times and places for good communication. distraction-free environments, times when it's not rushed, when you can really have a good conversation with active listening and careful communication, because that's going to help ensure that those important conversations are remembered. And I believe I get to do one more.
Yeah, you're the middle.
This is, yes, I am the middle. I'm the core middle here. We're going to talk about the use of mobility aids. And one of the reasons that I'm talking about this one is that at our Can Do programs, I spend a lot of time with the support partners. And we talk about how mobility aids and adaptive devices are not just tools for the person who has MS. They're tools for the whole family. And that's why it's such an important topic for us to be addressing tonight. So let's look at Ellen and Jeff. Ellen's MS has really progressed over the last year or so. Her walking is slower. She's less steady, and unfortunately, she's fallen 3 times in the past couple of months. Now, as a side note here, if I knew Ellen in person, one of the first things I would do would be to refer her to Megan to see if she's actually having a relapse which has not been identified and perhaps needs to be treated and addressed. But let's assume for the moment that this is not a relapse and Megan has done her magic and this is what it is right now for Ellen. And Jeff is worried. He's worried for her safety. He's bought her this beautiful cane that lives where many canes do, which is in the closet. Sometimes they're under the bed, but they're often in the closet. Her neurologist has even recommended that the cane may not provide sufficient stability for her, and he's recommended a wheeled walker for her safety. Jeff works away from home, and he's very worried about Ellen whenever he's not with her. He's worried that she'll fall, and he doesn't know what will happen or how badly she'll be hurt. When they're together, she hangs on his arm, which is actually quite tiring and difficult for him. He started to notice that he's getting pains in his neck and shoulders, and it's altering the way he walks, so it's creating some walking and hip discomfort for him. He wants to be helpful, but this is not the safest or best strategy for either Ellen or Jeff. And as a result, their activities have just become more and more limited. They feel like their world is just shrinking. Unfortunately, Ellen sees mobility aids as giving in and giving up. So she hates to acknowledge that she might need these things, and so she resists using them. Jeff, on the other hand, sees these tools as a key to their ability to stay active and do the things they enjoy doing together and see their friends and even travel, which they haven't gotten to do in a long time. So they see the tools in a very different way. So how are they going to talk about it? Well, we know that people often see mobility aids as giving in. But as I frequently would remind my patients, the fact that you sit in a scooter doesn't mean that your butt gets glued to the chair. So you can use a mobility aid to get from point A to point B, and then you still have the energy once you get where you want to go to get up and do the things that you want to do. So these mobility aids aren't giving in. They're actually taking charge of your MS so that you can be active, independent, and safe. People also worry, and sometimes this is true of support partners as well, they worry that using the mobility aid will make the walking worse. Now, we don't have a PT here to flatly deny that, but Megan, could you as a nurse practitioner put in a vote here to remind people that this is not true?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had this conversation with a couple just the other day. People hear that they shouldn't be sitting or using things that can make mobility easier for them because of the if you don't use it, you'll lose it mentality. But actually, and it goes back to exercise, struggling to get from point A to point B should not be considered exercise. So, using wall walking or furniture walking, as we say, and grabbing on to whatever loved one is nearby, because you might be falling to get from your bedroom to the kitchen and you end up with an elevated heart rate and huffing and puffing, is not exercise. That's struggle, and that's actually stressful for your body. But using a mobility aid to make it easier for you to get from point A to point B actually helps you with posture. It helps you with muscle development. It helps you use less energy, and therefore it improves your mobility over time. And again, as you mentioned, Roz, if you're using a mobility aid, you conserve energy, and then you have more energy to do focused exercise that will actually preserve your mobility over time.
Great. So no need to feel stigmatized or embarrassed. I had a patient who had finally, after quite a long time of working with her around her feelings about it, purchased a bright red motorized scooter, which she took out for the first time. And she was petrified that people were going to stare at her and pity her, and just, she was going to be stigmatized. So she's at an intersection and a man comes hustling over and she says, "Oh, here it goes. Here it goes." He's going to say, "Oh, you poor thing. I feel so bad." And what he said to her was, "That is the best looking scooter. Can you tell me where you got it? Because I really need to get one for my wife." So she was able to help somebody else, and it wasn't stigmatizing at all. This is another situation where support partners can truly be helpful. When you're at a shared neurology visit, talking about the activities that you value as a couple, the things you would like to be able to do together, really encourages the healthcare provider to help you think how to do that. And it's frequently a referral to a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. You can make the recommendations for the optimal tools so that you can do the things that are important to you. And as I was trying to convey with my story, the mobility aids and other assistive technology that you use are not just for the person with MS. They are for the whole family. They are the toolbox for managing this chronic illness. As somebody said it very clearly, this is not a me disease, it's a we disease. And so we really like to think about these tools and strategies as we tools, so the support partner can support their use. And also, support partners need to share concerns about their own health and well-being. So if there are orthopedic problems from lifting somebody or walking with somebody or helping to transfer somebody, you need to speak up about your own physical well-being, because that's another clue for the healthcare provider to make a referral to a physical therapist to give you the tools and strategies you need. So these are some conversation starters that can really be helpful. This first one might be for somebody who's talking to a counselor, a therapist like me. I'm told I need to use a cane, but I hate to think about it. Can we talk about it? As a spouse or support partner, we could be a lot more active and do the things we love if we had a scooter in our toolbox. Or saying, "It's very hard for me to go to work or to go on a business trip because I'm so frightened that you're not safe at home." So these are all conversation starters that you can have with the healthcare provider. One of our colleagues, Dr. Randy Shapiro, who's probably the icon in MS symptom management and has been for decades, says the answer to disability is mobility. And that itself is a conversation starter, because the aids that help you stay mobile are the aids that help you reduce your disability. And these are excellent resources, again, from the National MS Society and Can Do MS, webinars, web content to help you deal with mobility aids. Oh, more.
So I'll finish up with the unpredictable future. This is the what if stuff. And I think about this in several ways, talking about the future. The future is unpredictable for everyone. And I often wish that we could give webinars like this to the general population, because I can't tell you how many people I know who either just ignore future planning, or they just don't know what to do because it's not something that they were taught. So I think this information can arm all of you with really great tools. And I would encourage you to talk about these sorts of things with your family members, your friends, and see what they're doing to plan for their future. We're going to talk about Brian and Robert. So Brian is a 60-year-old widow. He lives with progressive MS in a 2-story house by himself. He is fiercely independent, and particularly since his wife died, who is Brian's mother, he has felt the need to prove that he can just, do this on his own. His son is his primary support partner, and he worries that his dad is not facing the reality of getting older, specifically when it comes to addressing his healthcare needs and his financial planning. Robert's currently using a cane, but his walking is a bit worse. He won't answer Brian when Brian tries to talk to him about his plans for the future or for needing more help. And Brian worries about his financial situation, even though he is still able to work. So he's a 60-year-old working man, but nonetheless, he's worried about how long he will be able to continue doing what he's doing. What's the challenge about talking about the future? Well, because it's unknown, it causes anxiety in, I would say, many of us, and particularly in people who are living with diseases that are unpredictable. That weight of unpredictability gets a little bit heavier. From a provider standpoint, the provider may not want to cause more anxiety, and we are bred and taught to offer hope, not to bring you down by causing you more worry and giving you more things to do that are potentially worrisome. We also have predictive factors about what your future with living with MS may look like that are based on sex and age and relapse rate and MRI changes, but we don't have a crystal ball for everyone. In fact, many people who sit in the category of poor prognostic factors do very well with their MS. And so even the prognostic factors don't always prognose the way they should. So it's a big challenge. How can the support partner be involved? Well, you've really just got to take a deep breath and bring up the elephant in the room. Ensure that support and love are a part of the plan, not the problem. And so by that, what we mean is developing a conversation around, hey, Dad, I want to be a part of your future. I want to know how I can help you take care of your healthcare needs, how I can help you with financial planning, because I love you and I want to support you and I want you to know that. What happens a lot that I hear, and I'm sure Roz hears, is I don't want to be a burden. That's what the person living with MS may say. I don't want to be a burden to my son. And so as a support partner, what you don't want to say is that, kind of take things to a martyr situation. I would abandon everything to help you. I would, that's not what you want to do. You want to be a source of support, a source of love, and a source of encouragement for that person, so that that person also continues to feel a sense of independence, because that's what they're ultimately trying to preserve. Successful conversation starters are things like, I think it's a good idea if we plan for our future. Let's talk about our desires together. Because Brian, at the age of 60, still working, may be looking forward to traveling when he retires. And Robert, his son, may have always wanted to go on some trips with his dad. They're a great source for making memories, And so once Brian starts to talk about his wishes, Robert may voice that he wants to be a part of them, and it doesn't come across as like a guilty thing. It's like, hey, Dad, let's build some memories. Let's build some time together. And then what things should I think about in regards to life planning? And that may bring up suggestions about insurance, long-term care, planning a way to modify a home, those sorts of things. So some resources that we have developed for you include a comprehensive directory for developing advanced medical directives, which is on the National MS Society website, and then also a webinar about managing progressive MS, which delves a lot more deeply into these life planning type resources like advanced directives, wills, home modifications, paid support partners, and that sort of thing. And these are the things that are, again, if you don't talk about it, it's not happening. These are the things that people don't want to talk about because they're morbid. They bring up our own mortality as human beings. And frankly, we're all going there. It's going to happen to all of us. And so we might as well get there pleasantly, instead of having to hurry, scurry, and worry at the end, right? So, so just a different way to think about things. Roz.
So just one thing I want to add that's not in the resources, that magic 800 number at the National MS Society, you can also call and ask for a free financial planning consultation, and they will set you up with a group of volunteer financial planners with expertise in chronic illness who can help you figure out if you're on the right road to financial planning or if you need more assistance, and then they can connect you or help you find somebody who can do more work with you. I think the one other thing that I would add to what Megan was saying is based on my experience with people when they would come to me in counseling and talk about the things that they were scared of, all the what ifs that kept them awake at night. What if I can't work? What if I lose my ability to walk? What if I become cognitively impaired? And so what I would try to do with people is to say, okay, let me know what your worst concern is, what the thing is that keeps you up at night, and let's talk about it. Let's figure out what you would do if that were to happen, and what you could begin to put in place today that would help you be more prepared, less vulnerable if that happened. So sometimes it's looking at other job retraining possibilities. Sometimes it's looking at moving to a one-level home. Sometimes it's doing that financial planning with somebody, so you're not just stewing about it, you're having a plan for how to be prepared. If the disease doesn't progress and those things that you were so scared about don't happen, you haven't lost anything.
Right.
But what you have gained is a greater feeling of security, so you don't have to be stewing about it all the time. So look it in the eye, talk about it, and then tap the resources that can help you feel more prepared and less vulnerable.
I think about it like my grandmother's recipe box. You know, if someone were coming over for a snack or for dinner, she just opened it up and pulled something out, and there it was, and there wasn't a thought in her mind about it. And it's the same kind of thing, the worst case scenario. You have a plan, you write it down. You know, it doesn't have to be in great detail, but if it happens, boom, there it is. There's not the anxiety around, you know, those details when you need them most. So
we're ready for some questions.
Yeah, we're ready for some questions. Thanks, Holly.
Hi, thank you, Roz and Megan, so much for all of that great information. We did get a couple of questions, and I just want to see. One of the participants had asked, I thought this was a good question, the person with MS was worried about upsetting their partner by telling them about their symptoms, and they didn't want to sound needy and they were afraid of hurting their partner. What would be the best way to deal with this sort of situation?
So this is a person with MS, you said?
Yes, a person with MS who's worried about upsetting their partner by telling them about their worsening symptoms. And because they don't want to feel needy, and they're feeling bad about hurting their partner or making them. Does that make sense?
Sure. So I'll start, but I'm sure Megan has more to add. But I think we're not very good at keeping secrets, basically. If our bodies are not responding the way we want them to, or we're feeling pain or weakness or fatigue, it probably shows in our face, in the way we move, in the way we do everyday activities. So my guess is that your partner is probably worrying already, and bringing it out in the open and talking about it, and perhaps going to the healthcare provider together to see what might be done would save a lot of time and energy, emotional and physical.
Yeah, big sense of relief. And, you know, I think inviting your partner to a visit is also a great way for your partner to be firsthand involved in what plan ensues for providing some symptom management.
Nice, thank you. Another one that kind of dovetails nicely into that one is the person with MS was wanting to show their gratitude for their support partner. And, you know, they really appreciate them and they do tell them, but then they were concerned about, you know, do they really understand how much they appreciate them, and what are some like alternative or creative ways to make sure that their support partner understands and knows how appreciative they are for their care and for their support. Maybe some strategies in that way.
You know, as a person who's not so great at accepting help or also at receiving praise, I would say the best gift for me when I help a person is to just be told thank you. I appreciate you for exactly these things, you know, maybe for bringing dinner for me or for the way you anticipate my needs. I don't think there has to be an elaborate a gift involved. I don't think there has to be a flowery thank you note. I think a moment of just intimate gratitude is enough. And then, you know, the other thing is if there's something that you enjoy doing, that could be seen as a gift, like maybe you enjoy baking or crafting or something like that. Using your own gifts to give that person a gift is also pretty meaningful.
And, you know, I think we talk about maintaining balance in partnerships all the time. And this is not just spouses or partners. It can be dear friends or others who help you. But in a balanced partnership, everybody gives and everybody receives. And so you may not be able, as a person living with MS, to do all the same things you did before, but there are always ways to show attentiveness, interest, support, concern for the other person. So you are providing support in your own way, and that in itself is a thank you and an acknowledgement that the support that you give each other is critical to maintaining a satisfying, close, and balanced relationship.
Nice, thank you. Thank you both. Another question that I had that came up was the person with MS was concerned about how their moodiness or their changes in their mood and their cognition might be affecting their children. And what are the best ways and creative ways to handle this sort of situation?
I'll tackle that one first. I think it's actually a great question. Quite a few years ago, we did a study looking at children who had a parent with MS, and we went into people's homes and we interviewed kids. The youngest were age 7 all the way up through teens. And one of the messages that came through loud and clear was that the parents' mood changes and sometimes the cognitive changes were even more challenging for the kids to understand than the physical symptoms. I mean, physical symptoms, they can kind of see. If mom has difficulty walking, a child can see it. But when it's moodiness, irritability, forgetfulness, lack of attention, I think kids find that harder to label and harder to understand. So I think it's really important for parents to talk and explain. I think if as a parent you find yourself being unusually prickly, irritable, lashing out at your kids when they don't really deserve it, sometimes they do, but lashing out just because they're close by, not because of any good reason, that sometimes is a red flag for depression or being overstressed. And you as a parent, I think, need to take responsibility to talk to somebody about that and see if you need some help with those mood changes, that irritability. And in terms of the cognition, I think that teaching kids about cognitive change is very helpful. They can participate in a family calendar to help you keep track and remember. They can help you keep the household organized so that things go back where they belong and you're not having to hunt for them all the time. You can engage them as your team members in helping you maintain consistency and organization in the household, and you can explain that that's one of the issues with MS that they can help you with.
Yeah, and that increases their sense of independence and responsibility too. Another thing that I thought of that might be helpful for younger children is like the FACES scale for pain. So you may have seen the FACES scale. It goes, from a sad face that's crying to a really, really happy face, and there are several in between. And you might do a FACES scale and explain to your children that when you say you feel so today, this is the face that it looks like. And so children have really an astute awareness kind of built in before everything else gets in the way of what emotion looks like on people's faces. And so you might use that to explain to your children what an emotion looks like to you.
They can practice making faces back to you.
Yeah.
Nice. Those are really good suggestions. Thank you. One other question that we had, I think we have time for a few more questions, but the person dealing with MS or the person with MS is dealing with loneliness and feeling like they're not exactly sure how to manage this. And what are some strategies with loneliness that you can offer?
So I'll go ahead, Roz. I think one of the most important strategies is to reach out to whoever your closest support person is in life in general, even if it's not your MS person, and make a connection, make a date to see someone, and also to make a phone call to your healthcare provider and initiate that conversation that goes something like this: I'm feeling very lonely and I'm struggling and I'm not sure what that means. Can I come in and see you and talk about it? Because that feeling of loneliness, can just lead to isolation. It can lead to depression. It can be an indication of that. The MS patient advocacy associations have really wonderful links to local support groups. If you feel like you're the only person with MS, you're not. So I'd encourage you to look at those and get involved with a local support group. watch webinars from Can Do MS, see about an online support group that may be useful for you if you struggle with transportation. There are many Facebook support groups that are available for people living with MS. But I think loneliness is a sign that needs to be addressed as one that could be very important and lead to more serious challenges.
I couldn't say it better. I think that's exactly right. It's important that you let people know what's happening.
Great. Thank you. And I do have one more question. I think this is a good question as well. What is the best way to support a person? This is, pardon me, let me start over. This is a question asked by the support partner, and they're asking, what is the best way to support their person living with MS when they live far away geographically?
So at our Can Do programs, we frequently have support partners, pairs, who come who are not spouses or partners. They may be neighbors or a sibling who lives far away or a parent who lives far away. And it's a challenge, right? Because you're not face to face with that person. You can't tell what's going on. And so one of the first things I advise is that the two people have a heart-to-heart conversation about how they want that support partnership to go. And that means, how much detail do you want to know about what's really going on with me? Do you want to know how I'm feeling? Do you want to know what the doctor said? Are you comfortable sharing that information? Sometimes it's very hard for a person who's far away, who's trying to provide support, when they get the feeling they have no clue what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried, they're concerned, but they feel like they're sort of operating in a dark hole. So if you negotiate how you want that relationship to be, maybe we'll talk once a week and we'll catch up on everything that's going on in your life and my life. Or maybe you come up with a different plan. But it's important that you decide together how that relationship can be supportive for both of you, helpful to both of you, and intimate for both of you, no matter how many miles there are between you.
I'd also add, I can't even tell you how many times I've had office visits with a live person and a speakerphone, and now FaceTime with a support partner who lives far away, or perhaps even one who lives with you but is on a business trip and you couldn't change the appointment. So I would also ask your healthcare provider if they felt comfortable inviting in a virtual support partner to an appointment so that you have an extra set of ears. I've encouraged that sometimes with people as well.
Fantastic idea.
Great. Those are some great resources and great answers. Thank you so much, Roz and Megan, for your valuable information. This was a great start to our Embracing Cares webinar series. And thank you so much, Roz. And Megan, do you have anything else to say before I continue on with the slides?
I love
thanks,
doing
everyone.
webinars with Megan, so I look forward to getting to do more. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Roz and Megan.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it so much. Thanks. And to all the participants, you'll receive a follow-up email with a recording of this presentation. Whoops. You'll receive a follow-up email with a recording of this presentation and a corresponding podcast on mood and cognition. And I would like to tell you about some additional resources that you may find informative and helpful on the Can Do MS website, candu-ms.org. You'll find archived webinars, e-news, and library articles. And you can also submit a question to ask the Can Do team, which will be answered by our team of MS experts. And there are also lots of ways to get involved and to give back to the Can Do MS, and there are lots of easy ways to do this. You can start a personal, pardon me. You can start a personal Kick MS fundraiser and ask for donations instead of gifts, and you can do these in lots of creative ways. You can have a bake sale or a walk in a 5K, and anything goes. You can help raise awareness also and support families living with MS by purchasing one of our MS Loci bracelets, and these are really beautiful bracelets that carry elements from the highest and lowest points of the earth, and reminding you to find balance and stay humble during life's highs and hopefully during those lows. You can consider a recurring donation. A gift of $42 a month becomes $500 a year in annual giving. And to increase your impact by setting up a reoccurring monthly, quarterly, or annual gift, contact us directly at 970-926-1271 or select monthly when making your donation on the donation online. And you can also celebrate your birthday with Can Do MS and ask for donations instead of gifts. And 100% of your birthday celebration will send families living with MS to life-changing programs. And any way that you choose is certainly appreciated and will reach more families living with MS. Finally, I would like to thank EMD Serono for partnering with Can Do MS on this webinar series. And the next presentation in our Embracing Cares webinar series will be on Tuesday, September 19th at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And the subject will be when hands-on caregiving is added to the support partner's role, practical information and strategies. For those participating live tonight, you will see a survey appear on your computer screen. Please take a moment to complete the survey and share your input. Your feedback helps us to continue to improve our webinar series. And thank you all for joining us. And we hope you have a really great evening, and we will see you on the next webinar. Good night, Roz and Megan. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.